We are the Sustainability Institute, and we focus on issues of sustainability and resilience. And so we incorporate environmental sustainability as well as economic prosperity and social equity issues. One of our big areas is looking at sustainability and resilience in cities and in communities. And OSU is like a medium-sized city. And so it gives us tremendous opportunity to face the challenges that many cities face and to solve those challenges right here on campus. We've made great strides in terms of retrofitting buildings for energy efficiency and retrofitting our campus. On the teaching side of things, we have an increasing number of sustainability curriculum and courses and programs that are offered to students. Ohio State gets now a significant amount of its energy from wind farms up in Northwest Ohio. And we also are committed to reducing the carbon emissions that are coming from our energy consumption. And so Ohio State is acting in ways that very much are demonstrating our commitment to these sustainability goals and challenges.
Please welcome Dr. Elena Irwin.
Have you ever wondered, as you're driving out from downtown Columbus, going east on I-70, you go straight, and then there's this crazy turn to the south? I'll tell you the story. It's a story about Hanford. Hanford is the neighborhood that lies right at that turn. Hanford Village was founded in 1909. It had its own mayor, had its own police department. After World War II, the village was marketed as a place where returning African American vets could purchase a home. It was actually one of the few suburbs where they could purchase homes on the GI Bill. Most of the suburbs at the time were white and restricted. And black vets did return there and purchase home, including some of the Tuskegee Airmen. It was a respectable middle-class neighborhood. It was also a red-lined neighborhood, and when they built the highway in the 1960s, it bulldozed right through that neighborhood. Destroyed most of the homes. There's still a few that are remaining today. This is also a story about Bexley. Bexley lies just to the east of that crazy turn. Bexley was at the time, and for the most part still is, a wealthy, mostly white neighborhood with expensive homes. The turn is not an accident. It was intentional. There are lots of other examples of this kind of injustice in our city. Think about the South Side, the location of the trash-burning power plant, the landfill, the noxious facilities. It's hard to overstate the consequences of these kinds of decisions. The unintended long-term decisions of these. You know, the intended effect of the highway was to not only produce efficient transportation, and it certainly does do that, but it was also to contain or even eliminate the quote-unquote urban slum neighborhoods. And it did just the opposite. It actually made things much worse. And we now have greater concentration of poverty there, or on the South Side, greater concentrations of pollution. And so, you know, it makes us wonder, are there things we could have done to better anticipate those consequences? We still live with the legacy effects of our decisions today. And it's really only with the benefit of hindsight, the wisdom of hindsight, decades later, that we're able to more fully understand the consequences, the longer-term unintended consequences of these actions. I live in Bexley. I travel that interstate every day. I get off at the exit for Bexley, and I go past those few remaining homes of Hanford. For the longest time, I didn't know the story. I only just learned the story recently. I used to look at those homes, and I would think, what a strange place for houses. Now I look there and I think, what a cruel place for a highway. About this point, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with environment, sustainability, or Ohio State? We'll get there, I promise. Just hang with me. These kinds of economic and social injustices happen not just in our city, they happen in city after city after city across the United States, around the world. And they are just one of the challenges of our sustainability challenge that our cities face. There are, of course, others. Cities are resource hogs. They consume vast amounts of resources, energy, water, materials. They rely on supply chains that extend around the world to feed the resources that they need. Cities consume over 2/3 of the world's energy, and they produce more than 70% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. They are a primary contributor to climate change. They're also affected by climate change. With climate change comes rising temperatures, extended heat waves, drought, more stress on aging infrastructure, greater frequency and intensity of superstorms and extreme weather events. This is from Superstorm Sandy. Cities are immobile. They cannot flee in the face of an oncoming storm, nor can a lot of their most vulnerable populations. And the more unequal a city is, oftentimes the less resilient it is. But cities are also these amazing places of innovation and creativity. They are the economic drivers of our country, really of our world. And they're the place where people come together with skills and ideas and technologies. They drive markets, they create art and culture. If you take a person from outside the city and you put them in a city, on average, they will be more productive. Why? Because of the connections and the interactions, the intersections that they get from the city. Cities are truly one of our most amazing inventions. Just think where we are now globally. Over half of the world's population now lives in cities. Fast forward to 2050, that number goes up to 2/3. That's another 2.5 billion people living in cities around the world. And what's most amazing about that is that 60% of those cities have yet to be built. Just think if we could unlock the code and the secrets of developing sustainable cities. We have a tremendous opportunity to do that for the cities that are not yet built and to help the existing cities adapt, to make our cities more sustainable, more environmentally sound, more economically productive, all while also being socially equitable. The message is simple. Global sustainability, meeting the future needs of our future generations, depends on cities. Cities are complex. They are complex systems, just like the human body. They are comprised of many sophisticated and interacting systems. They're not just one system. They are systems of systems. They're systems that do a whole lot of good, but they're also systems that have a lot of unintended consequences. Just think if we could not have to have those unintended consequences, if we could somehow leverage our cities for purposeful good instead of accidental bad. In order to do that, we would have to have a way of representing the system and of representing and capturing the complexity of those systems. In order to experiment with our system, try new things without having the real-world consequences of those unintended effects. We would have to have some kind of simulator, some kind of simulation city. I know what you're thinking. I've played those games too. And while there is an aspect of gamification here, what I am talking about is a whole research program, a program of research and engagement that would really drive tangible outcomes to drive towards more sustainable cities and really move the needle on this problem. It would combine the capabilities of an observatory where we collect the data, we analyze the data, and study the system, with a virtual laboratory where we could experiment and try out new things without having to worry about those unintended consequences. But also a place where we could really develop the experiments and test out our new ideas for real, all in collaboration with our partners so that we can implement and scale solutions. We call it the collaboratory. And here's our big idea. Our big idea is to develop the Collaboratory for Urban Sustainability and Partnerships, or CUSP for short. CUSP is comprised of 4 components, each that build on the other. First, a data observatory that has the sensors, the infrastructure, the computers to collect, store, share the data that will allow us to study the systems and also to understand the experiments that are going on right now in cities. Cities are filled with real-world experiments that are going on. Think about the e-scooter example that descended upon Columbus and many other cities just a year or 2 ago. Think about Smart Columbus and all the deployments that are going on. These are real-world experiments, and we can learn a lot about the city as a system if we had the data to do it. The knowledge that we gain from the data observatory feeds into the second component of CUSP, a digital twin, a virtual city, where we use computers and software and models to build the representation of the systems of the city, pioneering a new science, the science of urban sustainability. We're also able to sit with policymakers or stakeholders or community people and run what-if scenarios. What if we were to triple the number of CODA bus routes? What if we were to use rooftops for urban food production? What if we actually had a smart electricity grid that delivered energy to homes and businesses only on demand when they needed it? What if we could harvest rainwater and use it for gardening rather than allowing it to run off and overwhelm our waterways? We could conduct these kinds of experiments virtually and avoid the unintended consequences in the real world and learn from those mistakes. Of course, we still need an actual place to carry out real-world experimentation, and for that we need an actual city. We have a city right here. Our campus is a city within a city, and we have a smart campus plan that is helping to build out campus as a living lab. The fourth component of CUSP is a network of cities and universities from around the world so that we can learn from each other and we can implement solutions at scale. Ohio State is uniquely positioned to develop CUSP. We have amazing faculty and researchers who have the domain expertise and are world experts in things like mobility, energy, water, infrastructure, social justice, government policy, housing, economics, and economic growth and innovation. We have these centers and institutes that are at the heart of leading the interdisciplinary research of CUSP. And we have the partnerships with the city, Smart Columbus, MORPC, CODA, and others, and we are already partnering with them on pieces of this big idea. We need your help in order to make this vision a reality. We are at the cusp of developing more sustainable and resilient cities. Thank you.
Fantastic, Dr. Irwin. So tell me, what would it cost to stand up CUSP, to start it, and then to sustain it?
So you won't be surprised by my answer to say that with 25 million,
yes,
we could do a whole lot. We could do the data observatory. We could develop the digital twin, which is the virtual city, in partnership with our region here, our regional partners here, local and regional, as well as 1 or 2 other areas. But if we wanted to go beyond that and really develop this vision of a network of cities across the United States and really around the world, 60% of those cities, most of those new cities that are going to be developed are going to be in Africa and Asia. Mm-hmm. That would take more than just 25 million.
You bet.
But 25 million would be a great start.
That's a big idea. Questions for Dr. Irwin? Okay.
Hi, my name is Arif Nuri from Leadership Annual Giving. Could you talk about some of the challenges that exist in terms of creating these new experiments in a city like Columbus, and then in terms of like the data collection of whether they're effective or not, what are some of the hurdles in that as well?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And as I said, we're starting to do some of this work. We're collaborating with Smart Columbus right now to look at some of the, to assess some of the impacts of the mobility, the new mobility technologies that they're deploying, things like autonomous shuttles in the North Linden area, for example. And one of the frustrations there is if we had the partnership in place 2 years ago, when they were first developing all of the innovations and thinking about how they were going to deploy it, we actually could have used a research method, to really make sure that we get the data pre and post to really analyze those impacts in a good way. So that just underscores the importance of having these partnerships in place over the long run, because so often, you think about e-scooters as an example, these experiments are happening in ways that are no one's really controlling it. They just, like e-scooters really just descended upon our city, and that happened all over the country. And that's why it's so important to have those baseline data in place, so that as these experiments occur, some of which are highly disruptive and unplanned, that we have the ability to analyze the impacts.
So thank you so very much. And thanks everyone for coming. Again, this was the third in our series. The next one happens September the 3rd. Come back, Bird Polar and others on the docket. And please don't hesitate to stay behind and talk with our faculty who are here for you. Thank you for coming.